So today I thought I'd talk about a couple of different things. Number one, this guitar. So I'm going to show this guitar today, and then I'm not going to show it until I do all my stuff to it. So this guitar is a 2015 Arctic White Fender made in Mexico. I think it has the cool logo on the headstock. I bought this on Craigslist the other day, and I will be selling the neck. It's on Craigslist right now, and it's got like a nice little sound to it. But I'm gonna swap the pickups because I used the noise canceling DiMarzio. I haven't even set up the bridge yet. As you can see, this is like a floater, which I always pin it down because I don't like to do any type of bends, which is kind of why I limited my intro to something as simple as bread. Plus, I love that song. So this is the guitar. It's Arctic White, has the white pickguard. I can't tell, but I think that might still even have this. Well, maybe not. Oh, I think it does. I think it still has the sticker on it. I can't really tell. They make these new cool headstocks with the 70s logo. So I'm gonna be putting on a Wenge neck made with Wenge with an ebony fingerboard, stainless steel 6100 frets, and I'll be putting a gold logo here that says Fender, but looks like the 70s logo, the Dan Smith style in the small headstock. But anyways, I got a great deal on this on Craigslist. It's really in mint shape. I mean, the neck doesn't have any fret wear whatsoever, and so I got this for $300, and hopefully gonna get a $1.50 at least for the neck. So that'll put it at the guitar for $150. The other neck cost me $4. The pickups will cost me another $100.50. So we're looking at somewhere like around under $800 for the guitar that I could go out and gig with, and that's pretty crazy considering I very rarely can play with stuff off the shelf and like them. So those who have seen my other build by Warmouth, it was that yellow guitar that has the maple neck with the ebony fingerboard, and I took it into Wolf Hernandez in Boston, and he scalloped the last 4 frets for me, the last 5 frets, and I did it from the 17th fret, so 17 to 22, and he carved it just so I could get under the first 2 strings with the scallop. He also shaved the neck down because I got a boat neck, and I wanted it to be a harder V than a soft V of a boat neck. So this time I thought for this guitar with the Wenge neck, I thought I would go with a Clapton shape because I know it's a little smaller. But I still went with the 1 3/4 nut width. And I really dig Warmouth parts. And to me, it's like if you really like the Warmouth necks and the neck shape is important to you. And I also got the stainless frets, and those things are important to you. It's almost cheaper going the route of just getting a whole new neck and buying one of these Mexican Strats. So that's my next build, and I will show that for you when it's done, which should probably be mid-January, and I'm pumped for it because I love Strats. I'm a Strat guy, what can I say? I love Tellys too. I'd probably do a Telly build, except I'm eventually trying to get my buddy to sell me his G&L, the one that I used on the Josie video and the others. I think that's just a great guitar. It's really excellent. So I really couldn't think of anything that I wanted to play today. My mind's been scrambled. I've just been so busy. It's the end of the year and all the clubs start booking. And I really wasn't sure how long I was going to be here in Massachusetts. My goal is now June because we picked up a wedding gig in June. And so the guys, for the guys in the band, I figured I would stick around till then. So now I'm booking. And because it's also easier when the clubs book, they book the first 6 months. So I've just been booking like crazy, trying to get everything booked and to make it worth my stay here. And lessons have been getting a lot more as well. And again, if you're in the Boston area and you want lessons, you can reach me through here. My email is in the YouTube down there, and or if anybody wants Skype lessons or anything like that, we can talk about that. Whether it be theory or anything else, whatever you want to do. You know, it's funny. I was talking to a couple that came out to a gig of mine, and we were talking about bands and whatnot, and just you know, I'm up on stage playing songs like "Bread," "Orleans," and the girl, the wife of the couple, comes up to me and she's like, "Did you play in a band with the drummer from Megadeth?" I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah. Nick was in my band, the Big Angry, for like 3 years." And she's like, "I couldn't believe it when I heard the stuff you were playing." I'm like, "Well, I play everything." But I'll tell you the story of Nick Menza, because Nick passed away last year, and Nick was a great, great guy. And we had our ups and downs in our relationship, me and Nick. Well, actually, it wasn't bad until he was leaving the band, and then, um, well, I'll tell you what happened. So anyway, uh, we had a band, and actually, in hindsight, looking back, um, I I probably would do the same thing again. We let go of our drummer, although I really liked his I liked his brain. Like he really played what was going on a lot in my head. Although he didn't have that second bass drum technique down, and that was something that I was a growing thing with me. That I was like, I need it when I need it. I don't need it all the time, but when I need it, I need it. And his timing was for shit. And I just don't know if that would have changed. But anyways, Nick definitely wasn't the same type of drummer. In fact, my mind was on this guy Joel Maitosa from a band called 24/7 Spies. And so we talked with Joel, and Joel was down in like Temecula area or whatever, and just couldn't make the drive, couldn't see making the drive, and we couldn't see making the drive to him, although we thought, and I still think to this day back then, he would have been the perfect fit for the band. Because the band in my mind was me trying to uh, take a mix of like what Soundgarden did on Bad Motorfinger and mix it with what 24/7 Spies did on Strength in Numbers and meld those two types of minds. And although that's kind of an absurdity to say, because I think 24/7 Strength in Numbers takes such a gambit of reggae, soul. I mean, there's so much great stuff going on there. But I mean, putting it in the context of a hard rock band. And then Soundgarden was kind of taking what Zeppelin and Sabbath did and mixing them. So it was kind of like this whole bouillabaisse of all these different styles that I was trying to do. And I thought Joel would have been great for it. But anyways, a friend of mine called me, this producer in Los Angeles called Shahar. So Shahar calls me and he's like, "Hey, listen, I just did something with Matt Sorum, I think it was." And he's like, "And Nick Menz is looking for a gig. He's looking for a band." So I'm like, "All right, well, let me, what do you want me to do? You want me to call him? Do you want to call him for me and send him some stuff?" Anyways, I forget how it went down. I think I ended up calling him and emailing him some tracks. And he called me back and he was like, "Yeah, I'm good. Let's do it." So Nick joins the band, and surprisingly came in, learned he had learned like 4 or 5 of the tunes that I had sent him, which I really wasn't expecting. I thought we would feel each other out, but he had them pretty much down, which was great. And Nick was great. Nick was like one of these drummers where it was like when the intensity was right, he was great. He was such a nice guy. He came from a musical background, and his dad was a like a sax player or a horn player. I think he was a horn player. I can't remember. I think he was a horn player, Don Menza. And we had a lot of great times with Nick. I'll tell you a real funny story. This like, Nick had some demons he was fighting at the time, and sometimes he would show up to a gig, and you would say, "Oh man, he looks fucking great. He looks like we're gonna kick ass." And then we'd go play, and I'd be like, "The heck is going on here?" So this one gig, I remember clearly it was the Dragonfly, and I had all these. I called him up and I'm like, "Do you want me to tell you the changes? I have a couple of changes in the tunes." And he's like, "No, no, no. Just tell me when I get there." I'm like, "Okay." So we went on. I think our gig was like at 9. We needed to be there at like 8, and it was getting like 8:30, 8:40, and then here comes Nick. and he looks like he had literally just got up. I mean, it was like he looked like he had a rough night the night before. It was just, and all I had was a sinking feeling. I'm like, this is going to be terrible. So I tell Nick, I said, Nick, listen, um, you know, here's the changes in this song in the chorus. I want the bass to, I want to go into a double bass, but only I mean, literally, I was very specific with, like for 2 bars on, 2 bars off, 2 bars on, 2 bars off. And he's just looking at me like this, like looking down. He was like this. Uh huh. Uh huh. And all I can think of in my mind is, I'm having a hard time remembering what I'm telling him. God forbid he's not even going to know what the hell I'm talking about. Anyways, I tell him like 5 different changes, and he just looks and goes, okay, I got it, I got it, I got it. And he walks away, sets up the kit. So the first big change happens in the first song. We're coming up to the part, and I'm just playing, and I'm just like, I'm not going to look back. I'm just going to play the song. And boom, right where the first change that I had mentioned to him was, he nails it like he's been playing it his whole life. And I do this like, I look at him, and he does one of these to me. Like, who knew? I was crying, laughing from that night on. That was our best night, and that night it was actually funny because we actually had Warner Brothers out there at the gig, and yeah, I don't want to go into everything that they had to say. It was actually a lot of good and a lot of not so good, but it was just it was very interesting, and it was a great night. We had a lot of laughs, Nick and I, and Nick and the band, and. Yeah, and then when it all started to unfold, when Nick like was just, I don't think Nick could get his shit together at that time, and yeah, because I think what Nick passed in 2016, and I believe that the claim then was he was 8 years sober, so that would have put him back to 2008, and I think the last time I reached out to Nick was well, I spoke to him a few times in 2013 and 12. And I could tell that he was like back into like normal Nick again. But around 2005, I think it was 2005, I reached out to him, or 2000, yeah, 2006, and it wasn't, I wasn't met with kind greetings. Well, what happened was Nick quit the band, and then his drummer, his drum tech, I think his name was Gary, was filling in. And Gary was a good drummer, but he wasn't great. But he was good. And so Gary was filling in. And, Gary was like, yeah, we all talked and realized we had to replace Nick. And so we started holding auditions and whatnot. And then there was like a lull. There was like 2 or 3 weeks when my singer had to go out of town. And he was the one that took care of the guys down at LA rehearsal there. And so, we don't know anything until he gets back in town. So all of a sudden I get a call from Nick screaming at me, like, you locked the door. I'm like, oh, the door's locked? And I'm like, oh, well, the first was like a week and a half ago. And Jim's out of town, so he didn't pay it. But he always just pays when he comes in. They take off the lock. It wasn't a big deal. No one even thought about it. But there's no way in hell that I'm driving downtown for, 2 hours in traffic and regular time to go, whatever. So I was just like, yeah, that's not our lock. I go, that's just something that they do when Jim's out of town and he doesn't get to them before the 1st, around the 5th or whatever it was. I'm like, they just put a lock on it. Don't worry about it. It'll be off. No, I already got the stuff. You try to steal it from me. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know there was a lock on the goddamn thing. I guess, so then we had several emails back and forth, and I guess then he went and talked to Chris Poland, who at the time was running it. And told him that, yeah, it was their lock, not ours. Because I said to him, go talk to Chris. You could find out. And he was like, and I said, it's already off. Jim's back in town. So I think Jim had to pay it because he was the one that was on the lease or whatever. So no one else could really do it because they couldn't unlock it for somebody. But I guess, Nick knew Chris and whatnot. But we weren't trying to scam him. But he just thought it was like, you got, whatever, and I understood how it was. And we had a long talk about it years later, that it was, that he understood that he got it and that, apologized and, whatever. And, But I can't say enough great things about Nick. I really thought he was a fantastic musician, drummer. And I want to say musician because he was also very musical. He sat and wrote guitar. I remember he had a cello blaster and he was always writing on it. And he actually came up with some really cool riffs. He was writing some riffs and showed me them. And I was like, well, we should work these into a song. And that was right before kind of everything imploded. But we did a lot of great shows with Nick. And I really cherished that time. And you know, it was a lot of fun. It was some great times. And then when we went to go, so then what ended up happening was we couldn't really find a full-time drummer to fill in. And I remember we had we did a session for a film called Bigger, Stronger, Faster, a movie by Chris Bell. And I needed a drummer for it. And I ended up calling Ray Luzier from Korn. And I think he was in Korn at that time. I think he had just joined Korn. He might have been in the band a year. And then he came in and did the sessions for us. And if you go on the SoundCloud, on my SoundCloud, and I'll put it down there, we did a song called Land of Confusion by Genesis, and you can hear Ray Luzier playing with us. That was a lot of fun. And my band's old manager's been messaging me, texting me, trying to get dates of when I'm coming out and wants to put the band back together. And he's working on a few reality shows and possibly wants to do something. So we'll see what happens. But that was a real fun. If you were in the LA area in the mid-2000s, you probably came out and saw us. The Big Angry played. We played the Whiskey. We played the Troubadour. The Dragonfly we played. We played the Gig early on a lot. Neil at the Gig really liked us. So and that was too bad when that place closed. And we actually did some recordings. I believe it was like right in the very beginning. We did some recordings at Metropolitan Cleaners, which is in Santa Monica. And on the roof there, the second floor, this guy built a studio, and we recorded there. And then after we recorded there, I know somehow he got some tracks to Jerry Cantrell. So then Cantrell decided he recorded there, and Jerry recorded there. And then I went down there and met them while they were recording their stuff down there. But Metropolitan Cleaners, I don't even know if they still have a recording studio there, but it was great. I mean, we had a lot of fun there. I'm blanking on the guy's name who ran it, but if Mikey Bells is watching this, post a comment to what was his name, because I can't remember. Mikey Bells was the manager of the Big Angry. So yeah, and you know the funny thing, going back to Nick, the funny thing about Nick was Nick had never met Chris Poland before, who was the original guitar player in Megadeth, until I introduced them because he was playing at the studio with me one day. And I said to him, I go, you know, Chris Poland runs this place. And he was like, no. He's like, is he here? I want to meet him. I said, yeah. So we went down. Those guys talked for like an hour while I was just sitting there. It was very cool. But then later, and up until the point when he passed, Nick was playing for Chris Poland in his band Ohm. Yeah. And Chris, I can't say enough good things about Chris. I think Chris is a real genuine nice guy. I really liked him. Anyways, that's really all I have to say for today. This has been a long one. Very good.
You're right on target. You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today.
You're right on the money, everything you said. You're 150% correct. You guys are absolutely correct in what you're saying. And I totally agree. You guys are right on. And you're 100% right in what you were stating. And I agree with everything you said. And you're absolutely correct.